Welcome everybody, my name is Mark Graham. I'm a faculty member in the Theology and Religious Studies Department. I'm also the organizer for this position series of talks. We're going to have two on the theme, Why I Am Catholic this year. I'm going to give a brief introduction to each speaker. We're going to give roughly 10-minute presentations, so there will be ample amount of time for a question and answer session afterwards, so feel free to ask questions after everybody's finished, okay? To your left, in the wild pink dress, is the woman who actually has the longest hyphenated name in North America, Mary Catherine O'Reilly Ginhart, right? She recently got married, so she might have actually lengthened her name somewhat, okay? Mary Catherine was an MA student here in the Theology and Religious Studies Department. You completed your MA, what, 6, 7 years ago?
Like 10.
Like 10 years ago, yeah. And she is now a PhD student at the Catholic University of Leuven, Belgium, right? And
University of Glasgow, Scotland.
University of Glasgow, Scotland. Sorry about that, okay? But she's almost on the cusp of finishing her PhD program. I think if you were to use a football analogy, she's on the 99-yard line just getting ready to fall into the end zone. So we're trying to push her there and to get her there as quickly as possible. Hi, sister. So welcome to Mary Catherine. Sitting next to her is a member of the royalty for the Villanova men's basketball team, Ed Hastings, who was actually our starting point guard for a number of years, and when Villanova played UCLA in the national championship game in 1972.
They remember that, don't they?
Guess who the starting point guard was? Ed Hastings, right? So anyway, Ed Hastings, good to have you here, Ed. Ed teaches one of the most popular courses in our department. It's called Spirituality in Sports, which you teach 2 or 3 sections of every semester. They're jammed to the gills.
One semester.
One a semester. But if any of you are interested, right, it gets a lot of attention. It's very hard to get into. In the purple, bluish, Joanna Scholes, who is a longtime faculty member, and I have to admit that Joanna makes me jealous in so many different ways, okay? She is way more popular than I ever will be as a teacher. She's got fantastic kids, and I want my kids to grow up into her kids. She's got adorable grandkids. She's like the picture of perfection, right? So it's good to have you here, Joanna. Thanks for joining us tonight. Last but not least, on your right is Peter Spitaler, who is a Bible scholar who also started the PhD program in the Theology and Religious Studies Department. For which we're kind of thankful for that, at least at this point. And he was also the chair of our department for 10 years. So imagine 30 professors, all who think they're right on pretty much everything and trying to manage all those different personalities. And Peter did it with a great deal of facility and compassion. So we thank him for his fearless leadership and also for being a good Catholic as well, okay? So tonight, each one of us, or these guys, are going to be given their spiel on why they are Catholics. We're going to start off with Joanna. Thank you.
Mark, your kids are great.
Oh,
His kids are bigger now, and all those pictures on his office walls when they were little need to be replaced. Okay, I asked to use the podium because you won't see my knees knocking. As Mark said, I'm Joanna Scholes, and I'm happy to be with you. I'm nervous to be here, but I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to discuss my journey in the Catholic faith with you. I spent 20 years teaching here in the Theology and Religious Studies Department, as well as being an academic advisor to freshman, sophomore arts undeclared. How many of you fit that category, freshman, sophomore arts undeclared? Right? You have to be here because you're an ACS? Yeah, no? Okay, all right, good. Anyway, happy to be with my colleagues, whom I miss very much, and my former student, Mary Catherine, who didn't have as long of a last name when she was my student, who's also my friend. Anyway, I was really eager to come tonight, but I was also nervous because I've never done a presentation that wasn't more academic in nature, and this one was more spiritual and more personal, and I didn't know how to put my feelings into words. So that also made me feel sympathetic towards students who are given assignments and have to do oral presentations. I was happy to have this assignment, though, because preparing this talk gave me the opportunity to reflect on my Catholic faith during the season of Lent, when we give extra attention, hopefully, to our prayer life, to acts of penance and charity, to self-denial, and to helping others. If I had to give a one-word summary about my religious participation and growth in faith in Catholicism, it would be this: music. As a young child, my mom would play the piano and we would sing, "Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so." My mom and dad took me to Mass at a very young age, and I remember looking at that massive and majestic instrument of worship. My dad said, "Would you like to play the organ someday?" And I said, "Sure." And so it began. At age 11, I started taking organ lessons from the Sisters of St. Joseph. Happy St. Joseph's Day, by the way. Happy St. Joseph's Day. And I was in the children's choir as well. In 1967, yes, I am old, I started playing the organ for Sunday Mass at St. Kevin's in Springfield, where I am still participating in music ministry and have been music director for a long time as well. Playing the organ has helped my spiritual life in many ways. Alone in church, practicing my music, I didn't even realize at first that my faith life was being strengthened. I enjoyed that peaceful time in God's house. It helped me pray, even when I actually wasn't even conscious of praying. You know that saying, those who sing pray twice. Well, that goes for instrumentalists as well. Over the years, I have come to know and work with many people in our faith community. I have been inspired by the people worshiping, singing in the congregation, who come because they want to be there. I have learned from others who serve God in various ministries, be they also worship leaders, clergy, lectors, etc., and the people who serve in Jesus' name beyond the liturgy. Many work in outreach ministries to the poor, not just locally, but in other areas of the world. I am constantly reminded of St. Paul, who says in his first letter to the Corinthians that we are the body of Christ. Jesus is the head who gives us strength to work in his name. We are the members of the body, each having unique talents, gifts to share with others. What good would it be if we were all musicians? What good would it be if we were all teachers? The strength of the body comes from our diversity. Each of us has different strengths, different gifts to share. Some serve in food pantries, some coach the young, some bring clean water to places in our world that have none, such as our Villanova engineers who have traveled to Nicaragua. Many of you have been or will go on spring or fall break service trips. You all made me look bad. I would go to Florida and you were going to places to serve. Anyway. As members of the body of Christ, each of us has the opportunity to discover our gifts. And in so doing, we find our identity. And in finding our identity, we find our purpose. And by sharing our gifts, we build community in the work we do. As the music director, I've been playing the organ at St. Kevin's for most of my life. When I got married back in 1980, my husband Don joined me in music ministry. I was thankful and fortunate to marry someone who can sing beautifully and play the guitar. He is my cantor at Mass each Sunday. Our 3 children have participated musically with us over the years through singing and playing the trumpet and flute. Who knows, maybe our grandchildren, we have 4, will also be involved in music. But maybe they will share their gifts in other ways, which is great. So when I practiced this talk, I stopped there, and it was only 4 minutes. And Mark said 10. I was like, ah. So I said, oh gosh, Joanna, you gotta think some more. So I did. So here goes the other maybe 2 minutes. Okay, when I practiced this talk, it was only 4 minutes, so I started to reflect some more and decided to share with you some of my favorite hymn lyrics, which not only give me joy, but more importantly, represent major themes in our Catholic faith. One of my favorite entrance hymns is called The Canticle of the Sun by Marty Haugen. It is peppy and joyful and declares, "The heavens are telling the glory of God, and all creation is shouting for joy. Come dance in the forest, come play in the field, and sing, sing to the glory of the Lord." Great way to start a celebration. When we sing Eucharistic hymns, we are reminded that Jesus is truly present with us, that he has risen and will return. Precious body, precious blood, seen as bread and wine. Here the Lord prepares a feast divine. Bread of life is broken now, cup of love is poured. Come share the supper of the Lord. This hymn was written by Lawrence Rosania. Loving and forgiving are you, O Lord. Slow to anger, rich in kindness. Loving and forgiving are you. This hymn by Scott Soper challenges us to be like Jesus, to love, to forgive, to be kind, not easy, keep trying. I keep trying. And finally, last two. Let There Be Peace on Earth and Let It Begin With Me by Cy Miller and Jill Jackson. It's a timeless anthem, a prayer for peace in our world and in our hearts. And finally, one of my favorite closing hymns is an enthusiastic and inspiring send-off by Christopher Walker. It commissions us to take the word of God with you as you go. Take the seeds of God's love and make them grow. Go in peace to serve the world in peace. Take the love of God with you as you go. Thank you, and happy Easter.
Thanks, Joanna.
Well, again, my name is Ed Hastings. A little bit about me, following up on Joanna. The question I'm looking at is, why am I still a Catholic? So I think something significant about me is that I used to be a priest, an Augustinian priest. But I left 25 years ago now. But Catholicism is still very much a part of my life. And I want to tell you about why, a little bit anyway, because we only have 10 minutes, right, Mark?
There you go.
I don't know if I'm going to go 10, but anyway. So I teach here, as Mark said, and I love that I can combine two passions of my life, sports and spirituality. And one of the things that Catholicism has helped me with is it's taught me a new way of seeing. That everything is holy. Everything is connected. I love the quote by Teilhard de Chardin. By reason of creation, and even more so because of the incarnation, everything is sacred for those who know how to see. And Catholicism has taught me to be able to make connections, to not exclude anybody. And I have tried to put that into my life in all kinds of different ways. One of the things I don't necessarily appreciate about the Catholic Church is how sometimes it has excluded people, and I've not really appreciated that. I love the church, but not always. And what I would say, there's a difference between the Catholic Church and God. We tend to conflate those two things, but I don't want to give a lecture here, but they are different, just saying. And so to be able to see God in nature, to be able to see God in simple things, bread, wine, oil, water, and to see that how they can be sacraments, small s, for us. They can be signs of something beyond us. And Catholicism has taught me to be able to appreciate that, to be able to notice the connections between people and nature. And so I very much appreciated that. Catholicism has taught me and continues to teach me about seeing. The second thing Catholicism has taught me that God is more about mercy than judgment. God is more about mercy than judgment. God is As Augustine said, God is closer to us than we are to ourselves, and God knows us and will judge us, but God wants to forgive us all the time. One of my favorite quotes is from Ephesians. Favorite quotes from the Bible is, "Glory be to God whose power working within us can do infinitely more than we can ask or even imagine." So if we ask for forgiveness, if we've made a mistake and ask God for forgiveness, God is going to be there for us more than we can imagine. God is way more on our side than we can imagine, and I've come to appreciate that. And it's taught me, from when I used to hear confessions to being able to participate now in a forgiveness group that I work with people every 2 weeks. We talk about forgiveness, the power of forgiveness in their lives. And I believe that might be one of the greatest messages, the most powerful messages of Jesus. It talks about forgiveness and how important that is in our lives. And it's really crucial. This quote just popped up to me from the group. So, the most influential person in your life is the person that you refuse to forgive. The most influential person in your life is the person you refuse to forgive. That came from our group, and I would say that Catholicism has taught me how significant forgiveness is. And God is much more willing to give us mercy than judge us. Thirdly, one of the things I love about Catholicism is, and Dr. Brunk will be very happy to hear this, the liturgical system or liturgical aspects of Catholicism. Sacraments, the seasons, the holy seasons of Lent and Advent that Joanna mentioned, feast days, they're significant. It provides me, I think provides us with sacred time to be able to remind us, because we can get distracted easily in our busyness of life, and the sacraments serve as, for me, and the seasons and the feast days, etc., they're testament to me, reminders that there's something more happening in our midst. I'm not sure how else to say that. And they remind me that that's going on, and I need reminders because I can get pretty crazy busy. And we all can. And we need that kind of thing. So I appreciate that. And the last thing I would talk about is how important community is. I'd like to go to Mass during the week here in Court Chapel, and but this is not the only place, but there's a certain community that builds there, and when people aren't there or I'm not there, I miss them, and I find that supportive, and even though I may not even talk to somebody, just seeing somebody at that Mass or even a Sunday Mass, how that is really significant and has played an important role in my life. So that's what I have for you. I don't know how long that was, Mark.
Good, thank you.
I'm obviously a prop professor, clearly, so just getting my stage ready here. One more thing. My photographer is also my newlywed husband here, also a Villanova alum. Oh, thank you, yes, you did. Okay, so students, I know that you like like free stuff. Now, there was no food this evening, so I thought I'd bring you and bribe you with other free stuff. Very important free stuff, okay? Sure. So I'm gonna talk about this, why I'm Catholic, the importance of, anybody know what this is? Rosary. The rosary, okay? Are you allowed to carry weapons on campus? Students or professors? Did you know you are allowed to carry one weapon? It's this, okay? It's a little joke, it's a bad joke, I know. So,
You're scaring them, Mary Catherine.
What?
You're scaring them.
The rosary is some people, have, has anybody ever asked you for your birth time? Right? Be careful, right? What are you? Are you this zodiac sign, your birth chart, right? You need your birth time for your birth chart, right? Some people prefer, what are they called? Crystals. Some people prefer moon water. I prefer holy water and rosary beads. All right? Everybody has their little thing. It's my thing, okay? So I have for you free rosary beads here. It's all free stickers. I know the thing is you put stuff on your laptop, so I'm just going to pass around. There's a lot of just Bible quotes, floating Jesus, floating Blessed Mother, different things that you can see to put on. If you want, take up to 5, 6, 7, you can pass around to your friends. And then I'll pass these out before I begin. So I am a Villanova alum twice over. Okay, I did my undergrad here. Woo, right? Community, right? Big thing called computer does, community, right? So I did my undergrad here. I was a triple major because obviously I was a nerd, so I did theology, education, and Spanish language and literature. After that, I did my master's. I did half of it in my undergrad. I stayed, got my master's here. Then the next year, I came back and I taught. So I was the youngest professor in theology at 23. So I had gray hair coming in. I didn't dye it. I put my glasses on to look older. I called it the Facebook, the Snapchat, to seem like I wasn't 3 years older than the people I was teaching. It was fun. I loved it. So this is part of my Catholic faith. Why did I become a theologian? Why am I here tonight? Why am I talking to you about something at 34 years old that I love to death? This is my life. You choose in life, what are some of your majors? Business, engineering, nursing, right? So you choose it. Why? Maybe your parents want you to do it. Maybe it's something you really love, and since you were in high school, you're like, that's what I want to do, right? Maybe, maybe not. And you take other classes. Maybe you take Irish studies. Maybe you take Spanish. Maybe you take, a zoology course. You do things that you also maybe have an interest in, and that interest might peak and grow further. So I did not come to Villanova as a theology major. I, honest to God, don't know anybody that ever has. I know people that come, they take a theology course, they take another one, they become either a minor or a major. My best friend to this day is a Villanova graduate. She was in my wedding. She was a Villanova major. She then went to law school. She's an attorney in Boston now. I have another friend, she was not a Villanova major, she was also a really good friend of mine, she's also an attorney. And my husband's an attorney, I like to surround myself with attorneys, and he's a Villanova law graduate, so obviously we love Villanova in our house. My mom's here, she's a Villanova law graduate. My dog, if you find him on Instagram, has 4 followers than me, his name is Villanova, the corgi. I kid you not. So we love Villanova, we bleed blue and white in my house. My husband and I were married at Villanova, I was baptized at Villanova, so I love Villanova, right? So that just goes without saying. So now, why stay Catholic at 34? Why be Catholic? Why go to Mass at your age, right? If you go to Villanova, you can do a million things. Your parents aren't on your back saying, are you going to Mass? Did you go to confession? Easter's coming, right? They're not there. You can say, yeah, I went, Mom, yeah, sure, Dad, whatever. It's up to you. You have that fire that's in you or not in you, or that grows or that burns maybe slower, and you figure out what you want to do in this time. This is your time, right? You're here tonight probably because you have to write an ACS paper, right? Or something, maybe extra credit. Or if you're for fun and you're my past student, Serena is here. Yay, Serena, she's here, one of my past students. Okay. Yeah! Okay, so, how did I get here? Okay, nobody just grows up and is like, I'd like to, hold a rosary up, in front of a class of like 20-year-olds and go, this is the way to live. I grew up Catholic, but I didn't go to Catholic school. My parents refused to send us to Catholic school, which is funny because I became a theologian, right? Why would your parents refuse? They grew up pre-Vatican II. If you take the class in upper level theology, you understand what Vatican II is. And that changed the church in the 60s. It changed in many different ways. There were many different documents that came out of Vatican II. So I grew up with 2 parents that thought, okay, this is our faith. This is like really what we want our kids to grow up in, but we don't want to shove it down their throat. So I went to a secular all-girls school down the street my entire life, called the Agnes Servant School. I went there my whole life. Then I came up, obviously, the same street to go to college. So I grew up with a faith from 2 parents that loved their faith. When people were going on a vacation down the Jersey Shore, my parents were like, let's take a pilgrimage, because that's what you do. So we went to Bosnia-Herzegovina in 1998 after the Bosnian War to go to visit a site where the Blessed Mother was said to have appeared. Does anybody know in Bosnia-Herzegovina what that could be called? It starts with an M? Medjugorje, okay? You can look it up, it's in the former Yugoslavia. So, growing up with a family that we prayed the rosary every Tuesday night, and it was like a thing. My mom lit candles and we just did it. It wasn't like some holy roll or holier than thou kind of vibe in my house. It was just part of our faith. You know, I remember one time my mom chased my brother out of the house with holy water because he wasn't behaving, okay? Like it was just like what we did. It was like a faith that we lived, if that makes sense. It wasn't that we went to mass, we sat there for an hour, we came home, and we lived different lives. We didn't do that. We tried to live it as we breathed it. So I got here, and I was doing my chemistry course here, which I actually had to withdraw from because I was going to fail. Because I was in an engineering chemistry course. And I did so horrible, so I had to withdraw. And I was like, I want to go to medical school because that's what I was told I should do by my dad. My dad, unfortunately, 15 years ago, I was a freshman here 15 years ago, and my dad passed away my freshman year of college. He was sick with cancer from my senior year of high school, and then passed away January 28, 2009. So I was just a freshman in my second semester, freshman year. And after that person who says you should go to medical school, this is what you should do, was not there anymore, I thought, all right, I'll do theology, but I'll go to medical school. And then here, lovely Dr. Peter Spitaler, who Michelle Sherman calls a national treasure, still to this day, said, Mary Catherine, you gotta jump 2 feet in, you gotta make it happen. So I decided, all right, let me do this. Let me do something that is not gonna probably pay anything. I'm not gonna become a nun, so I guess what? I'll teach and research. So I got into theology, and my faith was amplified. So if you grow up in a religious household, but it's not shoved down your throat, and you're so interested where you're at Mass, and you're like, who the heck are the Ephesians? Who are the Philippians? What are these Colossians, right? I don't know if you've ever been to Mass and you're actually listening, you're like, who the heck are these people they're talking about? It makes no sense. So I got into it. I never took a theology course till my freshman year. Father Capone taught my freshman theology course. He now teaches, anybody know who he is? He teaches in honors, if you know who he is. Yeah, he's really good at what he does. And I loved it, and I was good at it. So I got from my home life this sense of faith that was built by my parents. We went on a pilgrimage. It was not forced. It was not something that I felt like is a doom and gloom situation. And I haven't started my timer, so I don't know where we are. So I think I have 5 minutes left, maybe, right? A little less?
Very optimistic.
Okay. So I thought, okay, this is something I want to do because I really like it and I love it. So I went from here after 23, so I stayed 1 year and I taught. Then I moved to Louvain, in Dutch it's Leuven. Well, there's Louvain and Leuven. So I went to KU Leuven, the Catholic University of Leuven. Leuven, if you've ever drank Stella Artois, obviously over the age of 21 in this group, and you turn around the bottle of Stella Artois, does anybody know what it says? It says Leuven. So I lived for 2 years in the town where Stella Artois was brewed. It was cheaper to buy beer than it was bottled water. I kid you not, it was like 55 cents to buy a bottle of beer. It was crazy. So that was great. I got to go to school, drink beer, study theology at one of the world's oldest Catholic universities. It was really, I loved it. And I was around people that loved their faith, but they also loved that academic side. I had Joanna Scholes, I had Dr. Peter Spitaler, I had Dr. Mark Graham, and I had Dr. Brunk when I was here at Villanova University. And I was always that annoying student that was like, but why? But I don't understand, but why? And I took Mark Graham's class who taught ethics, and I was with my friend Shauna, who's just on my podcast, and he asked, I never understood that you could disagree with the Catholic Church until I took this class. I remember I raised my hand and I said, so wait, so you're allowed to disagree? Is that cool? Is it kosher? And he's like, why not? And that's where dialogue and becoming a theologian, I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. You can disagree, you can write a paper, you can talk about it, and you're allowed to do that. And he's like, why wouldn't you be allowed to do this? So that's where my faith, becoming Catholic, it was like, if you could see out of the sky, one light was the family, faith, and then the next light was academic, and then the third one was you can combine them, right? So, it doesn't mean it's easy. Things go on in life. I told you my dad passed away when I was a freshman in college. Then I went through another trauma when I was a graduate student. I went through a sexual assault by a clergy member, which was awful. My faith was tested to its core. Why would I want to stay Catholic when I had this hefty burden, when I had this trauma. How could I stay Catholic? How do I navigate my academic life and my faith life? How do I separate them or mold them together? How do I move forward when I feel like I've been betrayed not only by my church, but my community? So you have to find a way forward. You either do or you don't. And that's when I learned, okay, I know at Hastings talks about forgiveness, okay? Forgiveness and transforming that love that you have for God and for trying to find a pathway forward. And that's why I brought the rosary to you, because if you can't tell, I'm very Irish Catholic, right? Mary Catherine Riley Ginhart. My husband and I and my mom we're all citizens of Ireland and the United States. So our Irish culture and our Irish heritage, which we actually just celebrated Sunday, is a massive part of our Catholic faith. And moving forward, where I have people, and my research now is in clergy sexual abuse, I turn that negativity, that anger, that visceral just evil that I experienced in life I try to turn it to a positive. How do I help other people? How do I help those victims, that survivors, that I totally understand what they've gone through because I've lived it. So how do we turn that into something where we can learn? So I was here last year, I was the visiting instructor here for theology, and I taught at upper level in sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, focusing on England, Scotland, and Wales, and also Northern Ireland. And how do we learn from not only our culture, but other cultures that have experienced a carnage of faith and trust? And how do we move forward and create a community where we feel safe, where we feel respected, where we hear heard? So, I'm trying to mold this all in and end, because I'm pretty sure I'm at my 10 minutes, if not over. Why am I still Catholic? I'm still Catholic because I do believe in the faith. I'm still Catholic because I believe in the sacraments. I'm still Catholic because I believe in my rosary, and my prayers, and the Blessed Mother. And this is the last thing I'll say. When I was going through a tough time, I thought, the answer, my friend, is I'll go backwards. I'll convert to Judaism, and I'll just get rid of all the extra stuff, right? Me and God, we can hash it out. We can get Old Testament. We can get angry. We can go back and forth. And then I was sitting does everyone know where La Coloma is in Bryn Mawr? No? Okay, it's just down the street. You go down like Strawberries. La Coloma. Maybe like outside sitting. I was sitting there. It was December 12th. Does anybody know what the feast day of December 12th is? I'll give you a hint. Think Mexican. Yes, thank you. Our Lady of Guadalupe, that's her feast day. I was there, I was having my coffee. I don't even drink coffee, but I needed a coffee. I was there, and I was thinking to myself, today's feast day of Our Lady of Guadalupe. And I reread her story. If you look it up tonight, it's very interesting. It's about Juan Diego, and he goes, and Blessed Mother appears, and Blessed Mother says, build a church here, and he's like, okay. She's like, go back and tell people, build a church. And he was like, who's going to believe me? And she said, here, I'll give you, some roses here. And he goes back and he drops the roses, and there's her image is imprinted on his poncho. Okay? And I just thought to myself in that moment, I was reading it, rereading it, I couldn't deny the Blessed Mother for me. I couldn't deny her existence. I couldn't deny the Catholic faith. And that to me was my threshold back into the faith. I hadn't really lost it. I put away my rosary beads, put away my relics, put away my holy water, didn't go to Mass for like 6 months. And then it came to me that to me, it's my faith, it's real, it's alive, and it's living. The Catholic Church is a living church. It's not dead, archaic, old, dusty. It lives, it thrives, but it needs people like every single one of you to get up and keep going and go with the faith. Challenge people, ask questions. So, the rosary, if you Google it, you can find out more about it, but it's a set of prayers. In this last 30 seconds, I'll say. So if you like yoga, if you like listening to guided meditation, if you like, just jamming out to, who's a big guy now? It's not Lil Wayne, he's like a decade too late. What's a big rapper now? Nobody listens to rap music? No? Okay, how about One Direction's out? Think of somebody. That's really good, right? You listen to music, whatever it is, right? And you listen to it and you vibe out to it, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be a rapper. This is like that, but a little different. You meditate on Hail Marys, meditate on Our Father, say Glory Be, and it's a repetitive pattern, and you go over these stories in the Bible. And that is a way of meditation, of zoning out, but also being in reverence with your faith. You don't have to be Catholic to even pray. You can be whatever, because you can be Catholic and do other things and meditate. So here, they're free rosary beads, and I started a podcast. It's on Spotify. It's called The Theologian Podcast. Serena knows it's really good. We just have 1,600 impressions on Spotify. It's growing really fast, and we're on Facebook, Instagram, not Snapchat, but definitely TikTok. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that, and remember to have faith. I'll pass this around. And remember, it's free. Which is really important.
So,
There, by the way, she took 9 minutes of your time, so you have one.
I'll break it down in kind of 3 things. Now, I became Catholic at the tender age of 21 days. I don't know how much you remember of the time when you were 21 days old. I don't remember a thing. But that's what my baptismal certificate tells me. That's when I became Catholic. And now, 50-some years later, I realize I still am. Today is a journey that I'm looking back onto, a journey that has brought me from Austria in Europe, where I was born and raised, to the East Coast of North America. I didn't really know that I was Catholic until about age of 5 or 6 years. And I only found out because when my parents lived in this village in Austria, on the way from our house to the main Catholic church, you actually passed by a tiny Lutheran church. And it was around 5, 6 years old when there was a community on Sunday, a gathering in front of this church. And I remember asking my mom, who are they? That's when I learned they're Lutherans. Didn't mean anything to me at that point. I was born and grew up in the aftermath, it's a positive thing now, of the Second Vatican Council. The Second Vatican Council in the Catholic world opened up the church, the Catholic Church, to the modern times. I had the benefit of being raised and growing up, right, in the decade that followed. Renewal, new things, new music, a new liturgy, a new understanding of what it means to be Catholic in the world, and into that kind of opening of the windows to the world, into that I was born and raised. It wasn't until I actually went to boarding school near Vienna when I was 12. It was run by a Catholic religious community called the Salesians of St. John Bosco. Spent 7 years there, graduated. But during those years, a passion in me had grown for theology, and I decided to actually continue my journey by studying at the University of Munich the New Testament. And as I was engaging then in my late teens, early 20s, the New Testament, there's our biblical tradition, and then studying also theology in all its bandwidths, that's when I actually began to realize, like cognitively, what it means to be a Catholic. And as I'm looking back at my life now, there are some things that are important to me. That Catholicism, the role of Catholicism, in time and throughout history. I mean, my ancestry, religious ancestry, traces back in time through generations of believers, all the way, to the origins. And I'm part of that history. To me, this matters. To me, it matters that Catholicism is universal. I didn't know that when I grew up in this little village in Austria. because everything was local. But over time, I began to realize that the Catholic community is truly global, is diverse. And that speaks to me. That celebration of actually diversity that's still unified around core beliefs. And these core beliefs I've come to appreciate and embrace also in my adult life. Things like Trinity, things like sacraments, things like incarnation. Big, heavy theological terms, but they resonate with me personally. And I found it in the Catholic community more than anywhere else, that interest in faith-seeking understanding, that this nexus between reason and belief. Now, my life has turned the academic way. And so intellectually, this makes a lot of sense to me, but also from a faith perspective, that is, from my belief, my practice, my lived experience, it is very important for me personally to actually understand what I believe. And so the Catholic community has given me that framework to engage in these big conversations. I like that I'm not alone. I mean, from the time I remember until the very day right now, there's always been a larger community that has supported me. And that communal support, to me as a Catholic, is actually typically Catholic. This is also why I like it here at Villanova. Another community that embraces the Catholic vision and that supports me in my intellectual endeavors, but also in my spiritual growth and development. I love the celebration of the sacraments that were mentioned a couple times already. But the Catholic community has a way of celebrating ritually these doors to the sacred. To me, that's meaningful, not only in theory, all the more in practice. The sacrament of the celebration of liturgy throughout my life has nourished my soul and continues to nourish my soul. That is, to worship in a community that's united in faith, that's united in belief. And even though the worship itself has changed over the decades of my life, it's still celebrating the presence of God in community that keeps me in that community. The Church's commitment to social justice, that's something that is, from the very time I can remember, I was already a little boy. I remember that, why is there so much strife, inequality? I never understood that, and I still don't. But I'm part of a community that is very much aware of inequality on a global scale and actually has made the eradication of that inequality part of its paradigm. So to me, that speaks. Care for the poor aligns with my values, and of course also aligns with Villanova's ideal. My life has not always been smooth sailing, neither intellectually nor spiritually. Also not always in my relationship with the Catholic community. Mary Catherine just personalized the abuse crisis. I mean, for me, that has been and continues to be just the thorn in the flesh of the Catholic community in particular, of which I'm a member. The tension that I've experienced over the many years of my also academic life, between academic theology and lived experience, also often has challenged me in terms of my own commitments and in terms of that which is meaningful, also in the classrooms in which I teach. The most important thing for me in the last decade or so, on my own journey as a Catholic who is looking forward to growing older, actually has been the discovery of a way of thinking about God that's so old in our community, but still so underappreciated. And it is the discovery of the God within. It's biblical. It's been embraced and broadcast by the main figures in the Catholic tradition, Augustine, Aquinas, and onward. But I've stumbled on it, also personally, as a way of embracing that God who is both without and within, and therefore both local and global and universal. And so those are some of the reasons why I, now that I can speak on my own behalf, having outgrown the 21st days of my life, I can say, with full conviction and confidence, well, that's why, what are some of the reasons, why I am Catholic. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Peter. Well, thank you. 4 different portraits of the Catholic Church, participation in the Catholic Church, love for the Catholic Church, and the ongoing joy that all of us get out of the Catholic Church, which I think is very good for the students to hear about. We have about 10 minutes. If any of you have questions or comments at this point, feel free to raise your hand. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, out of curiosity, I was wondering if anyone, or I mean, some people already mentioned it, but I don't know what the right term is like you lose trust in your faith, maybe, or if there was any moment you wanted to like abandon Catholicism and like absolutely, and like how you switch from that mindset, I guess. Yeah.
I had that, and I explained it a little bit, but I started hanging out at the synagogue. I thought, what did Jesus do? He's at the synagogue. So I went to the synagogue, and I met friends, and I still have a really close friend today. She invited me for Purim, which is coming up. And I went and I met with other people of other faiths, and I just felt inside, like deep within, the Catholic faith is where I belonged. And even though it's battered at times and bruised at times and it's not perfect at times, it's my faith. And it's a feeling, I think, I mean, everyone's different, but that's what I have to say is, like, I couldn't deny the Blessed Mother. For me, and when my husband's like, well, what about Jesus? I mean, that's like the main show. And like I said, well, yeah, that too, but for me as a woman, that femininity, that devotion, I couldn't live the rest of my life without. And that was, for me, I left it, and I left it for a good 6 months. And then I came back, I went to confession, and I was telling this priest, well, this happened, and he was just like, we're just really happy to have you back. And that's the community here at Villanova University. And that's here, if you go to like the night masses, the student masses at Sunday night, and that's, I think, the true community you find here. So you can wander away and then come back and they welcome you with open arms. So I hope that answers your question.
I think for me, it's different from what Mary Catherine's talking about. For me, I actually loved being a priest. Actually loved being an Augustinian more than a priest. That's the truth, if that makes sense. But for me, an issue about church the reason I left was because of celibacy. You can't get married as a Catholic priest. And that was the issue. And I think for a good period of time, I began to question whether I still wanted to be, after I left, do I still want to be a Catholic? And I know that I have Catholicism in my blood, kind of like what Peter was talking about from 21 days. It's in my blood, and I couldn't cut off that life source for me. So anyway, that's a shot at it.
So I don't know if I would ever even consider leaving the Catholic Church. I'm one of these cradle Catholics who loves the Catholic Church and a lot of what it does. But I do remember the time when I had like an extreme revulsion about the Catholic Church. And that was in the early 2000s when the district attorney from Philadelphia issued the grand jury report on sexual abuse in the Catholic Church in the Philadelphia Archdiocese. And I've never been a wilting violet. I've seen some dark things in life, but when I was reading this document as I was going home from work every night on the train, there were times when I thought I was going to throw up. It's just like so horrifying what was happening in the Catholic Church, right? For many, many years, it was basically a pedophile exchange program between Philadelphia and Harrisburg and what was it, Altoona, Johnstown, right? And I thought to myself, how can you have such a complete moral collapse of authority in the Catholic Church when the guys you trust are the guys who show so much moral turpitude that it almost becomes impossible to stomach what they're doing in the Catholic Church, right? But then I started thinking to myself, why should these people that are more reprobate simply have the church to themselves, right? The church is just as much mine as it is Peter's and it is Joanna's, right? So I think what's important for me, I always think that God and the church are different, as Ed said, right? It makes a difference that the God of the universe is like madly and passionately in love with me, and I try to figure out a way to respond to that adequately all the time. And I found that the Catholic Church, at least right now, approximates that in terms of fostering that relationship with God as good as we can probably get in this terrestrial life. So what I think is good is to note the moral turpitude in the Catholic Church, to try to resist it, to condemn it when possible, and to try to institute different kinds of structures that weed that out over a long period of time. And I think the Catholic Church has actually been quite successful in weeding out abusers. Now, the bishops are another issue entirely, and sometimes I think they're still trying to protect abusers in the fold. But the bottom line was, regardless of what happens in the Catholic Church, I hunger and I thirst for God, and I am so thankful that I've had the Catholic Church to be able to provide the context in which I can actually pursue that relationship with God. That make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
Do you guys feel like your faith has helped you in critical moments, like make a decision or choose a path? And how do you feel like you're able to fall into your faith to help guide you?
Well, I can take a stab at that. Personally, for me, faith is sort of the baseline of my life. So faith is not something that I have at 6 o'clock in the morning and then no longer have at 7, but again, it's 6 o'clock at night, right? So faith is just the basis, the DNA that runs through all of my existence. So that means I also perceive my whole life and the choices that I make, at least infused, right, by that baseline, not always consciously, but when decisions are called forth, right? When I have to make a decision, when my conscience is at stake, when I have to choose between right and wrong, that is where that baseline really then kicks in, or is there for me to consciously call on it. As presencing myself in that baseline, and I actually know that baseline is not only mine, but it's also Joanna's, Ed's, Mary Catherine's, Mark's, and I would assume, for most, if not all of you. So actually tapping into that kind of web of awareness, for me, is a most important, also spiritual exercise and practice. so it's not, so that faith is not a thing that I call on occasionally, but that, occasionally, actually, I call on faith just to make sure that I remember the broader narrative that carries through my life. Is that?
So I'll reply. There are two ways in which my Catholicism is very important. So the first way is going to be like my ethic of everyday life. So I think the bedrock non-negotiable commitments of a Christian or a Catholic ought to be to love one's neighbor as oneself and to be an agent of compassion, okay? And I think that should be, those two things are the guiding force of my life, even though I fall short of those in a lot of ways, right? But also, I think one good way in which my Catholicism has helped me is I think I'm probably, if everybody's got their original sin, right? Frank's got his original sin, right? Catherine's got hers, right? Tim Brunk has his, right? And they're all unique and individual to us. And so my original sin is I can be stingier than most, right? With my time and my resources and my attention, right? Now part of that comes with parenthood, right? Limiting things you can do. But the bottom line is, I can love in a broader, more expansive way and give more completely of myself, right? But I'm like most of the ancient prophets, right? When God calls the ancient prophets, they say, I don't want to do that, right? I stutter, I can't speak the word, right? Jonah says, my God, you want me to go preach to these people in Nineveh? They're my arch enemies. I'm not going to do that, right? And God says, do it anyway, right? It doesn't matter what you think, just do it anyway. And so the older I get, the more I try to hold out hope that when I'm being prompted to overcome my inherent stinginess, right? That God is telling me to do something that's very important. And so it's the narratives of Catholicism that provide a way for me to counteract some of my inherent original sinfulness. And I think that's very good. That doesn't mean I always get what I want or I get to do what I want to do, but it means that I become a better human being, and I think I'm grateful for that. Yes?
Thank you for sharing your responses. I thought they were really interesting. Something that I always like to ask, when I was younger, I used to think that God looked like a whale, and I know we see like the pictures of God, and like it's like full of like an older white man. But I wanted to know what you guys think God looks like.
When I pray every night, I talk to God like God's my friend, and sometimes my husband will say, like, I think you should be a little more reverent. Because I'll talk to God like I'm having a conversation. I just go and I start, not always quietly. And so to me, it's not more about what God looks like. I mean, we have, God is man, Jesus Christ. But it's this friend. It's this possibility of love. And that to me, I don't know if this is answering it, but that to me is my concept, that's my vision, is somebody that loves me so much and that is so kind and that just, no matter what, is always listening, and I can rant and I can rave, and that then God will always be there. So sometimes, but I like to go to the saints a lot. That's something I forgot to say, is the saints were people like you and I, like living on this earth, minus like the archangels and stuff like that, but they were people that lived like how you live, and there's something that was so ordinary about them, but something so extraordinary. And sometimes when I pray through the saints to God, that will be like a visual for me, if that makes sense. If you Google today's St. Joseph's Day, like Joanna talked about, and that we see statues, if you go in the Catholic Church, of this, or St. Diphna, or St. Lucy, whatever it is, and sometimes that's, if I'm praying to God, but through the saint, that's a visual. If there's something, maybe St. Anthony, I can't find my keys or something, so, I don't know, something like that. I love my saints, they're great.
They are.
I really love them.
Absolutely.
Well, for me, thanks for the question. The image of God, is basically a question that I don't always or frequently ask myself. I always wonder, though, why, for example, those of you who are native English speakers, whose grammar does not encode God to be masculine, why in the English language still, God is construed most frequently as masculine. Now, I grew up in the German language system where it's der Gott. It's as masculine as it can be. Right? So you actually have to do some, intellectual shenanigans to think about God in broader dimensions. and I've done all that work. And so for me, I mean, how do you visualize love?